Daniel, my son, stood at the podium during my husband's funeral. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted the microphone. When he spoke, his voice cracked. "I want to thank someone who was there for my father through the hardest time of his life," he said, pausing, his eyes glistening. My heart tightened. I was sure he meant me. 40 years of marriage. The care, the patience, the quiet nights by his hospital bed. Surely he'd seen that. I could almost hear the word mother forming on his lips. Then he said, "Miss Linda Mallister." The name sliced through the chapel like a dull blade. A woman in the front row, the one in the emerald green coat and perfectly set hair, dabbed her eyes and nodded gracefully. I felt every head turn toward her, while I, the wife, sat unnoticed off to the side, clutching my purse until my knuckles whitened. Linda Mallister. I knew the name. She had been Robert's assistant, later promoted to consulting partner. Whenever I'd asked, he'd brushed it off. "She's just good at her job," he'd say. "Don't be paranoid." At the company's Christmas party, she'd offered me wine with a bright, practiced smile, the kind of smile women wear when they already know the ending. Now, as Daniel's words echoed through the chapel, I understood that the ending had arrived long ago. After the funeral, I stood at the chapel doors in the charcoal gray coat Robert had always liked, greeting mourners with the same composure he would have demanded. Robert had lived for appearances, and even in death, I found myself preserving them for him. Later, I overheard Daniel whisper to Linda, "You were the one who really felt like family." That was the moment I knew. The funeral wasn't for my husband. It was for the man who'd lived a secret life, a life in which I had long since stopped existing. That night, I sat alone in the dining room. Robert's chair was still in its place, untouched. The armrest where he used to rest his hand felt colder than I'd ever known it. His beer, that bitter brand I never liked, still sat in the fridge, 6 bottles lined neatly in a row. Habit, I realized, is the cruelest prison. I opened an old photo album. There we were, young, confident, shining. In one photo, I sat beside him at a board meeting, a financial consultant in a crisp suit. I had once been someone, before he'd said, "You don't need to work. I'll take care of you." And I had believed that was love. The next morning, I sat in the attorney's office, air thick with the scent of paper and old wood, as he read the will. "Mr. Robert Des Smith, signed 3 years ago," he began in a heavy voice. "The majority of his assets, including the Nantucket property, the Sommerville vacation home, and the remaining balance of his accounts, are to be transferred to Ms. Linda Mallister." My breath caught. My life stage went dark. I turned to Daniel. He sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes straight ahead, no sign of surprise. "You knew," I whispered when it was over. He hesitated. "Dad had his reasons." "Reasons," I said, my voice trembling. What did 40 years of marriage mean to him? He lowered his eyes. "She understood him," he said quietly. "You didn't." In that moment, I lost not just my husband but my son. When I returned home, I went into Robert's closet. His shirts were still pressed and arranged by color, carrying that faint scent of cologne and betrayal. I opened drawers, searching for something. Proof that I hadn't been invisible all these years. In a kitchen drawer, I found a folder. Inside was a letter from a property management company on Nantucket. The beneficiary's name, Linda Mallister. Dated 6 years ago. I had spent summers at that house, cooking, hosting, tending to his guests, never realizing I was just visiting her home. That afternoon, I walked across the street to my old neighbor, Mrs. Giselle, a sharp-eyed widow who'd seen too much of life to miss the signs. When I mentioned Linda's name, she froze. "Linda," she said slowly. "Wasn't she the one Robert used to take to the coast?" The world seemed to tilt. And for the first time in 40 years, I realized my life with Robert hadn't ended with his death. It had ended long before. I just hadn't noticed the funeral.